And we're live. Hi, I'm James Brown. I'm the proprietor of mediastudies.substack.com. I'm here with Sabby Ray Kulkarni for Saturday Kickback. How you doing, Sabby?
I'm very well, thank you. I can see you got your welterweight of media studies belts in the background. That's
Yeah, it's my heavyweight title.
You're looking very, very professorial today. You're looking older than me, and you're 10 years younger
Yeah,
than me. But I mean,
yeah,
very
yeah. I have the heavy
dignified.
beard going.
And the
Um,
grays. I mean, you need a professor suit. I need to be dressing up for this a little more because
See,
class
I'm
is in
I'm
session.
going into my Cornell West mode. You know, I'm gonna. Yeah. I need to find my my suit that I wear on all occasions. I thought it was gonna be a golf shirt because that's more me. But you know, if I'm gonna go full professor, So, Sabby, I'll leave it to you. Or maybe I should. I mean, how would you like to do? You want to talk AI first, or you want to go into your bag with your boy?
Well, I mean, I don't know what's on your mind first. I mean, I think we're gonna get to what's the bee in my bonnet, right?
Okay.
um,
So I went to I wanted one of the reasons why I reached out to you and make sure we got back really quickly is A, we need to do this more often, and B, I felt like we watched what we did before, and I had a lot of thoughts on my perspective there on media because you asked some really interesting questions about where local media is going. So I wanted to just sort of lay out some of my more fleshed out ideas for it. What I because when we tie back to the election, how podcasts like Flagrant, the Andrew Schultz show, like Rogan, and these massive podcasts, and the fact that they had this massive effect on the 2025 election. I think what's quickly about to happen is this what needs to be developed further, and I'd like to be a part of this, honestly, is sort of this mid world of podcasting, this mid world of digital, this middle undercurrent, more regional, more localized versions of that. I think that's going to happen. It's already happening somewhat. I think it's going. It's a hard thing to monetize, which I think is the thing that's preventing it from popping.
you explained that. You explained why the dynamics of why last week too.
Absolutely. Like just to briefly touch on it to anyone who's new, basically the way ads work. Yes, there are programmatic ads that target locally, but most of the ads that target nationally. They target a demographic. They're not looking for just Rochester, New York. If you are selling, I don't know, uh, jeans, you're thinking more broader. If you're Levi's, you're going to advertise on a a broader swath of society than just Rochester, New York. In most cases.
And then what you explained was conversely, if you're a
Hmm.
local advertiser,
Hmm.
you're not looking. It doesn't really benefit you to have a podcast audience that can reach anywhere in the world
Without a doubt.
that isn't laser targeted to local.
Yeah, absolutely. So local fame and local podcasts by their nature. So right now there are we have 3 listeners at the moment, right? They could be all over the world. One could be Poland, one could be in DC, one could be in Rochester. So it's harder for an advertiser to target people who are in different places for a local ad. If you have a car dealer in Fairport, New York, which is right outside of Rochester, New York, you want to reach people in Rochester, New York, and in the greater Rochester area, maybe Western New York, because people do drive to go get a car. They get the best deal possible to get the car they want to get. So it gets difficult when you do a podcast that attracts people worldwide to invest money into that. What I do think is going to happen, and I think it's gotta be a smaller support-based model, at least at start, is I think you're gonna have localized news and information. I do think that that's going to happen. I also think it's going to be more in the variety of flagrant, where it is sort of where the scope is a little bit more narrow, where it's instead of trying to get Israel Adesanya and the Israel Adesanyas of the world, you're trying to get whoever your regional version of that is on your show. And I think it's just sort of this pared back version of the podcast. The more I thought about it, the more bullish I am on the idea of these things actually having an effect on society on a localized level and a regional level. The trouble is, how do you monetize it? I'm still not there yet. I think it's a nut that's not cracked, at least not in my head.
I wonder how much of that could come from the nonprofit world to jumpstart it, or private investments combined with what is going to maybe be the residual comet tail, like the DEI mentality, setting these things up as like community assets. Because I do think media literacy is a community asset. And I mean, I would imagine lots of young people just have it by default, right? They're becoming content creators in some way, shape, or form. So maybe at some point somebody's going to recognize that if you harness this, there is a way to direct all that energy so that some of it precipitates as like a light rainfall and absorbs into the local ecosystem in some way, which is your question mark, Joe. I mean, I can't picture how that would happen, but there's got to be some way to catch that. Like once the synergy starts building, if I understand what you're describing, it's like a micro brewed media model, but
Yes.
with regional, like the way like food distribution, there's like regional focus, right?
Yes. So yeah, like, you want me to? I don't. I'll go into it. So like I interviewed for a job a while back, where it was a brewers association for New York State, and this association, basically, they are a nonprofit, but they support all the brewers in New York State who paid into this coffer. They advocate for them. They advertise for them. They try to empower them. That's one scenario that popped into my head based on what you said. We also see this with some organizations. I mean, locally, we there's RCTV, where we were a part of back on our old show, aired on their radio stations, and what the federal government and the Low Power FM Act allowed stations, small nonprofits, to have stations to broadcast that way. I'm not so sure the reach. And almost all of these shows have a digital presence as well. So it's like, okay, which one's bigger? But that kind of thing could form a support mechanism. if developed out, if built out a little bit further.
Hmm.
And I think there's going to be a need for that. The more I thought about it and meditated on the thought process that we discussed last week, that I don't think the trust in media is going to be coming back. And in your confidence that we would need a figure or figures in these in our communities like that, I think they're absolutely necessary.
Right, because when you say a figure like that, you were talking about the one broadcaster who either died locally or retired, right?
No, retired,
Right, right.
Down hard. So like in broader, just sort of a person that you can, or person or group that you feel like you could rely on for information. And yes, there's a media sense where I think in every era there's a group of people who you rely on for information, and it over the decades it takes different forms. At one point it was a town crier, you know, just standing on a box, just ranting. At another point it was newspaper columnists, you know. At another point it was a Don Alhart of the world. And I think it's got to take a digital form in some way, shape, or form.
Then it was Gawker. Now it's Gawker slash
Yeah,
TMZ.
yeah.
Wait, was Gawker the gossip one? The really shitty nest,
Well,
the one that I hated?
both were gossipy, but yeah, Gawker definitely, and Gawker went down because of Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, good. I
And
was cheering him on when that happened. Fuck them. I hate that whole thing. But you said people we rely on.
mhm,
I think it occurred to me while you were talking in a more sort of Joseph Campbell sense. I
mhm,
think people want folk heroes, and it isn't just for the information or for it's for it isn't just for news or our sense of connection to the world, although that's obviously part of it, why we go to media figures. It's partially we want our favorite storyteller on a deeper sense, and I think we crave, because like Walter Cronkite is more than just a famous broadcaster. He's a folk hero. John
mhm.
Madden is a folk hero. I mean,
Yeah,
John Madden wasn't doing news, right? But he was calling the games, and there's a sense of, oh, I'm connected to that figure, and I think those people. I think you're right in that those people are going to come from a local pool, and I think there's a really rich potential to turn local people into these are sort of equivalent of a folk hero, plus also the fact that media now, like the Substack model, the YouTube model, people want engagement with the voices they follow. They want to participate. They want a dialogue. It's not just a distant mythical figure. They want your interaction. Boom, it's right there.
and I think that's part of the problem with it right now is that it's easier to interact with larger outlets from around the world than it is your neighbors. At least it feels that way.
Sure.
That to um sorry about that. Yikes. That it feels like in order to engage on news and topics and information, that it's hard to discuss it with the guy next street over than some random guy on Twitter.
Which also sparked a thought.
Mhm.
I thought about the Kia Boys IG account?
Yeah,
Is there only
sure.
one? So, as people probably know,
There's
there's
a
this.
major one.
Okay, right. There's been this rash of Kia thefts throughout the country, but Rochester was a big hotspot for these
The
kids
hot
who.
spot. We were number
Okay,
one in the country. We are
and
number one. We're number
and
one.
and often, most often, I think, right, if I understand right, not stealing the cars to keep them, just to joyride them.
Yeah.
And part of it is because of relaxed bail reform
Yep.
laws. These kids, and they're mostly minors anyway, would just be released with basically a warning with very little uh, ability to prosecute them in a way that stuck. So they had an IG account. I wonder why there aren't more clusters of kids doing that kind of thing in just their mundane activities, not stealing cars, but just whatever. Hey, we went to the game store. Hey, here we are hiking in the woods. Probably because there aren't many kids actually hanging out physically with one another.
No, I think they exist.
Okay.
I do think they exist. I think this speaks to the problem I was describing. I think that it's harder to know what's going on in your neighborhood than it is to know what's going on Twitter or Facebook or Blue Sky. And I could rant about Blue Sky for a while if you'd like.
Please do.
But
Please do.
but
I'm very
um but um but I it, we are the connective tissue inside our communities, the places that I've ranted about for years and years and years, about third places and shared places, where we would share, where we not only go to shop and eat, but to be around each other and share information. These are all withering away across our nation, and what's happening is these digital menageries where, you know, people, even in this house right now, I am in one room talking to you, and my girl is in a different world, digitally involved with their people, and next door, unless we all go outside and actually talk to each other, which is happening less and less, we're not going to know what's going on in our own backyard. And that only happens when something catastrophic happens these days. That's the problem. So, like, I think and part of it is the medium itself. Right now, we're broadcasting on X. All right. Anyone. And then we're broadcasting on YouTube, and I believe Rumble. I'm looking at my list here: YouTube, Rumble, and X. We are broadcasting to the entire world. These places don't, or have not. They should. They have not made localization a main driver of what they do. They absolutely should. I think it's actually very fertile ground for them, where if you are Rochesterian, you could look at, all the Rochester people doing stuff here. All the Buffalo people doing stuff here. Or you want to peek into Kansas City, I can peek into Kansas City. Instead, it's all randomized and it's more topic based, which so I think in order to resurrect sort of this sort of local information centers, these places have to offer a more localized categorization.
I don't
And they
see
can do
why.
it. They know where we're broadcasting from. They know it. They can tell.
I'm shocked they haven't already thought to mine this. They could do two things at once. They could perpetuate their business model and also get credit for reintegrating local communities.
Mm-hmm.
They could rig it that way. I mean, I don't, again, understand all the technicalities, but I feel like they could, and they could still take all the data, do like really targeted marketing for region or local or city or neighborhood even. They could, dude, I'm shocked nobody's gone to knock on the door of Twitter and been like, hey, let's create these I don't know, like it's like Twitter is the radio band, and where you are locally or topically, right? There could be stacks of different bands. Twitter's AM, Twitter's FM, Twitter's whatever, right? And
Mhm.
but there could be local ones, and you're just
Yeah.
tuning in. I mean, they're doing that now with subjects, so why not with
Yeah, but that's exactly it. That's the competition. If you are like I often tell you, there's not one Facebook. There are 2 billion Facebooks. There's not one Twitter. There's whatever, 800 million Twitters. So, like I think they would rather have it down to 800 million and categorize it by subject in thing that you interacted with instead of by location.
But what
They
if
think
they
it's
can
more
make money?
profitable. They think that's more profitable.
Why can't they do both?
They could. We should talk to Elon.
We should.
Yo, Elon.
Elon shadow banned me. I wish I could find the tweet now. I know my Twitter reach went precipitously down. I mean, it wasn't that high to begin with, but it went way down. It went from like triple digits on my tweets, at the analytics, to almost nothing when I tweeted the scene from the movie Alien, the first one, which is my favorite film of all time, by the way, where the robot. I don't know how familiar you are with the film, but they find out one of the characters is a robot, and he wigs out, and then they like hit him in the head, and he his head comes off, and he starts vomiting. And I said, this is what it's like when talking to Elon Musk about free speech.
Ooh. I mean, we're trying to convince the guy to create a new tier of Twitter. You just take a shot at him.
I didn't just do it. I did that maybe 2 years ago or something. But I mean, man, talk about the free speech platform. He proved my fucking point. Like,
you think he targeted you particularly himself?
I think some process, some automated process completely limited my reach on Twitter after I tweeted that. It was like from 1 minute to the next, it happened. And I stand by the tweet, so fuck him.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit more. Obviously these platforms are owned by individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Corporations owned by individuals. These are not public, town squares. Do you think there's something inherently wrong with what he did?
Hell yeah.
Let's say that everything you said is true there. I don't know. Let's say it is.
Thin reptile skin motherfucker. I think I said he had reptile skin too. Plastic synthetic skin or something, which I think he does look like he has synthetic skin, but
well, no, let's take him out of it personally. I mean, like, let's say it's Savvy.com, and you own Savvy.com, and Savvy.com is the blue sky competitor, and someone takes shots at Savvy. Do you think that Savvy should be able to kick that person off the platform?
Well, my thing, let's just make the parallel complete. Let's say I founded y.com. I founded Y, the letter Y. If I had branded myself and sold the platform as a free speech haven, then yeah, if you have thin enough skin that when someone criticizes you, you're taking them off, then you're just you're just wearing it on your sleeve how full of shit your whole sales pitch was about it. I mean, I don't consider him a true champion of free speech. I think people who view him that way are in for a real rude awakening. But I mean, to 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 limit my reach based on that, I think is so utterly thin-skinned. And if you're like, if you have your own Substack or something, because I've seen Substackers do this. Ethan Strauss talks about this. There are other Substackers, they either limit their comments, they don't tolerate antagonistic comments, they set those rules out on the table. Ethan
Hmm.
Strauss, he's like, I'm not going to reward people for coming at me and feed them with attention, and then also teach my audience that that's how they get to engage with me,
Hmm.
right? So, I left a comment on his interview with Nate Silver, and I said, This interview just shows how unremittingly dull Nate Silver is." And then I heard him say something like that to, I don't remember who it was, and it makes sense. It's like, if he had responded, then that signals to everybody. So if it's your private plot of land, of course, set the rules how you want, set the decorum. It's like a bar, you have certain rules of behavior. We have the right to limit whoever we want coming in here. But if you bought X as the modern day equivalent of the town square, and you branded yourself as being a remedy towards the previous Twitter regime, who were in cahoots with the government and limiting certain speech and curtailing scientific debate and dissent and all that stuff, and had their own very specific tailored definitions of hate speech, all that stuff. And then you go ahead and I get shadow banned for saying that. That's completely absurd.
These so what your issue sounds like is with the conceit of it all. So, like, if the foundational pieces of the argument were different, where it's like, hey, I want a different kind of speech, is how I took it. But okay, I think he did, and I think he also said freedom of speech, not freedom of reach.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
um, if he said up front, like, hey, like these are the rules of the platform, and this is why I bought it, and I want to enforce a new set of rules, which I thought was just inherent, but that's just me. I'm the weirdo.
No, you're a realist, and you've been around the block and watched this enough to know he was going to do that. So you were just kind of like, yeah, he's going to do the same thing they all do, right?
Yeah,
I
everybody's got their favorites. It's sort of like when you have power, when you accumulate power, you are going to empower the set of people set of priorities that you see most necessary.
Yeah, but this is the thing. See, Blue Sky, I don't have as much of an issue with, because it's clear from the get-go that that's just the place where all the people who want to get into this hormoning, like cope fest, all the lapsed progressives who want their own dogma reinforced at them. That's, to me, it seems like that's the whole purpose of it. So I just avoid it. My issue is overall with, why are we craving spaces where we only engage with the speech we like? Because your local model, it either is going to proliferate more because people can have their own echo chambers, or it's going to break down, because to create a true something with local reach, the same way, what's his name, Earhart, or the local broadcaster, I keep forgetting his name,
Alhart.
Alhart. If we're gonna get to that point, we have to have people be able to dissolve those barriers and see their neighbors, at least in a digital space. And why can't we create something that at least attempts to leave room for true freedom of expression with certain reasonable boundaries. I don't know why. I don't know why the default assumption is, well, these are private companies. They can limit however, if you work for a corporation, they can limit what you say and blah blah blah. But we're not engaging with these platforms that way. We're trying to engage with them as if they were a public third space or third place.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, the average person wants to be in an echo chamber too. So I think we're all confused and confusing ourselves as to what it is we want. I wish there were a place where true information, articles, discourse could be waged without being massaged so that one side of the discussion isn't suppressed.
I could say a lot. I'm trying to decide which way I want to go.
I mean, how pie in the sky is that idea?
Pretty pie in the sky. Look, I think that okay, let's start with X, because I think that's what we were talking about. I think I'll put a point on it. The Twitter rules evolved. They were once one page, and then they became reams and reams and reams. Then Elon claimed there were no pages, and now they're it's much longer. I think that's why. Because, okay, who determines the rules? Where do the rules come from? Who's pushing for X in the background? Who owns it, and what's their perspective? What's their political perspective? What's their how do they own the company fully? Who are the other owners? What's their influence on it? Like, it's there you get, when something's not open sourced, and even when something is, but like if something is owned by a core group of people, they're going to have that influence on the thing. It's one of these arguments that, once again, bring out my girl again. We both love the idea of cooperatives. I think that they can work really well, and perhaps they can work really well on a local news model. And it's one I thought that maybe could. The trouble is, the people are people, and the persuasion of the people in the cooperative are going to affect the parameters of the content. It's the people who own it are going to affect where it goes.
Yeah, I mean,
there's no way around it. And I think what happens over time is that there's a creep, and people get emotional, and they make decisions that are not totally rational. And nothing gold stays. I think there's I am a low regulation person. Just broadly, I think that we should, one of my best ways that with drugs was that drugs should be legal, and we should have an education. You should know what they do to you. You should know that the effects on you, the possibilities, and that you should be informed to make your own choices. That's generally how I see the world on most things. But the thing is, I'm the rarity. I think you end up with these opposing parties inside these entities that make demands that they think, and especially in this era, they make demands because they think they're saving society. They think they're saving democracy. So I don't think, especially in these highly emotional times, in these highly emotional, highly influential institutions, it's kind of hard for me to see where that kind of thinking happens. That Vulcan kind of thinking.
Yeah,
Where
I mean, you said it happens even at open source. I
Mhm.
also wonder, even could even impartial machine intelligence even handle freedom of speech properly, even administrate it properly? I don't even think that could happen.
Probably not.
And it leads me to wonder, how much do we want it? How much have we ever, as a society, prior to the tech boom, prior to internet, social media, how much have we ever wanted or been capable of grappling with freedom of speech in its full, like, truest manifestation? Can we handle it as human beings, as a society, as a culture right now? Have we ever been able to handle it? I don't know what the answer is. I mean, that's a good segue into the Andrew Schultz Kendrick thing, if you want to go there. But I mean, it's very much on this same topic, but I mean, it's not localized to that one, that group of people that's currently calling for Andrew to, that he went too far, blah blah blah. I just wonder, have we ever been there, and to whatever degree being connected and being able to get into our own echo chambers has made things worse, because I do think it's gotten worse. How do we move out of that? But do we have the motivation to? Do people actually just want to see things that are tailored to them, to keep them sort of sliding down the same tube without much of anything ruffling, bumping their ride and screwing them up,
Mm-hmm.
It's like a water
Yes.
slide. It's like, I want my engagement to be a water slide. Don't nothing crash into the water slide and send me tumbling in a way that's uncomfortable. I just want to go wee.
I want to go on the Schultz, but I also I mean your setup there begs for blue sky. Too. So you want to wait for blue sky, or do you want to do Schultz first?
Whatever you think is, because I mean, I'm hesitant to get. We're gonna get into Schultz, but I want to be very, very careful. And I know whenever I talk to you, I'm not careful. So I want to be very.
Okay, I'll start with blue sky because I think that ties in to both. What blue sky is, and I do have an account, so I popped in because I as you call me the professor of media studies, I like to pop in on these platforms and see what they are. I at one point I watched every sitcom that came out every year, just because I wanted to. I wanted to see what was going on TV.
What year was this? So that must have been a long time ago.
Yeah. We're talking as a kid into the 90s, even into like college. I wanted to see these shows because you never knew which one was be the new Seinfeld. You had no idea. Okay.
That's hardcore. That is an aspiring media scholar. Like you were doing research as a kid. That's great. I love it.
Yeah, it never stopped. Now, when a new platform emerges, I pop in there and I try to understand. And what I have hated about the idea of blue sky is essentially what you're describing. It's a bunch of people. It's a political. The funny thing to me is the argument that's being said about Twitter without actually saying it is that, oh my God, these people have opinions that aren't mine. Fuck them. I'm going to go to places where opinions are like mine. And it's very interesting because in a place like Getter, which I also popped in and spent some time looking there, and a place like Truth, which I also popped in there and saw that, you essentially saw the same thing, only for a different reason. It's more, oh my God, I got kicked off here for my opinions. So I'm going to go have my opinions over here. Now, I don't think these are inherently wrong things or bad things. But what I do think that it's terrible for our discourse as a human race, as Americans. I think it's when you segregate yourself off into one echo chamber of an echo chamber, not an echo chamber, but an echo chamber within an echo chamber. All right, we're going into Inceptionville here. You end up with, as I heard multiple times on election day, that Kamala Harris was going to win Texas. That's what that's what you end up with. You end up with this sort of increasingly warped worldview. So on top of the warpedness that comes with us being narrowed down into little categories and our a mix of our followings and what we've interacted with, that has been sliced and diced by algorithm, we've from there narrowed ourselves down into these even smaller groups and smaller networks full of people who believe exactly what we believe. Hence why for those who follow jamesbrowntv.substack.com, like I wrote recently about why you believe what you believe. And the response was really, really interesting from people. It was mostly, well, well, I believe what I believe because I trust X, Y, Z, this news source or this person, or I seek out the facts from the New York Times and wherever. And it is like, even from the more skeptical people who follow me, there was this sort of lack of understanding that even places like the Times or Fox News or whatever,
or skeptic sites like Reason, all have
or the Free Press, another one, like there's that there's this inherent bias built into the thing. Their foundation is slanted one way or another,
and there's an inherent blind spot to looking at like a whole picture, and even their use of the term facts. Everyone uses the term facts. Everyone who uses the term facts is so wedded to their idea of what the parameters around. Yes, right.
The science, the facts, like there's this one set of the of whatever.
And what they're usually saying is they're not talking about the information itself. They're talking about the mechanism, the lens through which they make sense of that information. That's what they are really attached to, right? I look at the facts. It's like, well, have you interrogated what you're looking through? Right? Because I mean, yes, so you're absolutely right. And yes, I understand that these tech companies have hacked and they've taken advantage of these innate impulses and needs and drives and desires that we have. I get that. But at the end of the day, in spite of everything we know about how these platforms hijack our nervous system, right? There's all that that idea is well explored and it's out there.
Absolutely.
But what do we want? Do we want this at the end of the day? Right? Kind of like Coca-Cola, like because the human being evolved to not have much sugar, right? So for the tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of years, we barely got any sugar. Now all of a sudden we have so much sugar, but our impulse is still be, oh no, I want sugar. I'm going to store it up as fat because our physiology is built to do that. okay, if you start off on drinking Coke as a kid, you're going to have a problem. You're not going to be able to like resist it. But at the end of the day, do we want sugar? Do we want this? Is this, if you could wave a magic wand and each person could just have their wish, how many people would say, yeah, I like it the way it is. I want to be in my echo of an echo chamber.
I would say if we're being completely honest, I think most of us want it.
Because again, true freedom of speech is
Is
difficult.
and it's not desirable.
What did you say first? Is not what?
It's not wanted or desirable.
Mm. It's
To be
certainly not
honest.
easy. Certainly not easy. Please.
You're right. It's not easy. That's one. B, it is, even the people who claim they want it regulated.
Sure. Because you don't know unconsciously, because it's unconscious, the types of things you are uncomfortable seeing. Even if they're not necessarily harmful, they're just distasteful. And some of it gets into really uncomfortable places. You know, Matt Taibbi, it was either Matt Taibbi or Zed Jalani, or maybe both, maybe a combination of both, talked about how initially these tech platforms didn't want to do any. Is that a dog? Yeah, there's your digital. Now you sound like Darth Vader's like you. Yes, you sound like the ghost of MF Doom coming back to us through like a distortion pedal from another planet.
Let me unplug and
you're back. You're back now.
I'm back. Okay.
Yeah. So I think it was Matt Taibbi who said none of these platforms wanted to police anything initially. I don't know how he verified that or what.
That is true.
They initially were like, no, we're just like the phone company. We don't want this job. And then they got into it heavy. I don't know what transpired to get them to that point.
I think there's a few things. Ads was one.
Well, probably deals with the government too. Was like,
well, I think that's certainly part of the equation is government, but ads I think is number one and with a bullet. That ads, when you are dealing with advertisers' wants and needs and thoughts, and when people are giving you hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars, they have an impact on how you function. Also, as your companies become public, you become subject to the market. You become subject to the government directly, and not just the indirect and the the FBI showing up and talking to Mark Zuckerberg, which for those who don't know, that happened. That Mark Zuckerberg said this himself. That he and his people had direct conversations with the FBI before the whole Hunter Biden laptop circumstance, and that was certainly not the first time. We know from the Twitter files, and you could probably do this for every other platform as well, where the government made demands. And, if you are a tech company, if you're running a big company, the FBI showing up and saying, hey, we're trying to save democracy. So you need to help us save democracy. Do this one thing for us. Even when you're a Zuckerberg style billionaire, you think, okay, like they understand something that I don't. I'm gonna roll with them.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to pivot because I think this funnels into Schultz pretty well. I think there is no, you most people do not want people from outside of their little bubble to even comment on things inside their bubble.
Well, I can tell you just from personal experience recently, right after the Trump right after Trump won the election, I spoke up about it in a circle of parents who all have kids at the same elementary school. We're all friends. And I feel like after doing that, it didn't take a complete hit, but my standing in that group is somewhat visibly damaged. Now,
Sure.
I think anybody who knows me will, the first thing they would say is, "Well, how was your delivery, dude?" Because don't act like they weren't don't act like they're being unreasonable necessarily. I mean, I think the combination of the way I came across, my insistence, and what I was saying, all of those were unpalatable. And I mean, the one main person I was arguing with, I mean, she just was inviting my daughter to do something today, and we're still cool, but it put a little bit of a frost on things, and I feel like there are certain people in that group that are now like, it's almost like I spilled something. I spilled a
Hmm.
vat of pea soup at a dinner party,
Sure.
or maybe they even look at it as the emotional equivalent of I got drunk and spilled a vat of pea soup at someone's party all over someone's dress, and it's like, well, maybe we're not going to invite this person next time. There's a
Yeah.
I can sense, and there's still people in that group that I'm friends with, that I speak with, but I can sense the difficulty, and it's like, wow. On the other hand, the flip side of that is one of those parents introduced me to another parent with a kid at that school whose husband, this is maybe getting a little complicated. I had already met her husband, this lady. Husband's a Trumper, she's not. After the election, we had a fantastic conversation, and I was really struck by the difference in the way I was arguing with people online after after the election. And then here I am speaking to this person, and she's like, "Wow, that was so engaging." I was like, "Man, this is the way to do it."
Hmm.
It was like night and day, the difference. And this is somebody who, like, she and her husband have, this going on. So, and I had already met him, and I get along with him, and I had her laughing, about the whole thing. And I was like, "Well, you just got to find, some trans people who are Trumpers and introduce your husband to them, and then that'll," and she goes, and she laughed. So I think we want this if there's no more immediate tangible option available. I think we sense that this is difficult to do. These kind of disagreements are difficult to navigate person to person, so we shy away from them and go to our echo chamber. But if there's a road open to easing that tension, I think people would take that, because people are mostly driven, I think, by a need to fit in and not rock the boat socially. If there's a way to get there, okay, we'll take it. But if not, then I'm just not going to rock the boat, and I'll go to my echo chamber. That's my observation.
Well, I think
So,
there's a couple things, and I took down a note or two from what you were describing,
mhm,
right? So, um, let's start with subgroups because I think that speaks to everything we've been talking about for the last hour. So it also connects to Schultz,
mhm.
ironically enough, and so it's situational awareness. Uh, your kid, without getting too specific, goes to a pretty, I'd say, relatively liberal district.
Mostly, yes. In a suburban school district, there is a quiet conservative counterbalance,
And
though.
yeah, but I don't think they're not the prevailing group in that area.
They're not the vocal majority. I can sense from the way the school kind of plays it safe, though. They don't go full on. They kind of give lip service to a lot of these progressive ideals, but it's nothing like what we've heard in school districts in like New York City or in California. My sense is they know there's a conservative-ish presence that they don't want to run afoul of. That's my sense.
Well, I think that's another subgroup, right? So
Mhm.
you have you have the people who are in education. And if you look at education just in macro, we're going to make a gross generalization here. That the people who are attracted to education, generally, there's a leftward slant for the most part.
I would say
So,
overwhelmingly, wouldn't you?
well, I was being generous here.
Okay.
So what we know is that yes. So these are the people who are, they're creating the patterns and um the structure of our school system and our individual schools. There's variations along that line on top of that. And then you have this community. And then, I think there are expectations, and I've certainly run into them, both racially, um, uh, and it's happened much more in the last, I'd say, 15 years or so than it did previously. Where, well, no, it happened, but it wasn't as loud. It got a lot louder.
You and I have lived through a change that we can tangibly feel in
Without a doubt.
the ambient sense. You described it as once during COVID, being out at a bar and feeling like you were in church, like you couldn't say certain things, and
Yes.
that was noticeably more pronounced. I think you're right. It was there, but there was it wasn't hanging over it as in a way that you could feel the way you can now.
It wasn't slathered everywhere. It happened. You'd have interactions. You'd meet people. They would. It it wasn't as itemized. Getting right back down to the categorization, back to social media, because that's their choices in many ways mirror society. Whether which came first, the chicken or egg, you could argue either way, but but what you see is sort of this expectation that if you are X and Y, I can just decide all these other things about you, and I'm not gonna just be open and wait to understand.
Well, and also it goes in reverse too.
Yeah.
There's a reasonable you can sort of roll the dice and bet on that if someone is presenting outwardly one
Hmm.
certain, like they're signaling basically where they stand on one issue, that they are almost asking you to presume that they're on board
Hmm.
with a checklist of other things, where I don't know, because you did that segment on All in the Family, and I forgot the name of the guy
Yeah.
that wrote those shows.
Archie Bunker. Norman Lear.
Norman Lear. Yeah, thank you. Um, the whole comedy there was a generation gap, right? But I wonder,
Hmm.
during previous time periods, could you just look at somebody and then both presume the checklist, but then have them they want to be taken a certain way, right? Here's my checklist. You know what I mean? It's right here, like on my sleeve. Okay, so is this actually getting worse, or is it just amplifying something that was already there? I mean, obviously, it's a little bit of both, right?
I want to, I should get a fourth turning bell.
We should get a little you know how on the Breakfast Club, have you ever noticed when somebody gets upset at Charlemagne, they have the little graphic of the guy from Onyx, and they have a meter
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
guest getting angry,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they
yeah.
shake his head. We should have that for Neil Howe.
Shout out to Neil Howe. I got to get him on this show somehow, some way. Um, but because it's a cycle, and if you look at throughout history, not just the fourth turning, but so many, like going back further in society, there becomes periods where, well, there are two things there. One, yes, you can make those presumptions about people at any time because people clump together, people follow, even back to like deep religious times. One of the reasons why people, you look at some of the biblical principles about, like you can't, people didn't eat certain things in order to distinguish themselves as a group.
Hmm.
They wore certain clothes and didn't wear other clothes because they wanted to distinguish themselves as a group.
So you're saying it didn't even have any inherent utility or spiritual value?
Well, those were woven on top of it.
Mm.
So there's always sort of been a set of sort of attributes to different groups that have been applied.
I mean, this, I've been saying, and this, I can show you my application to Empire State College, which got approved for an independent study on this long before I encountered John McWhorter talking about wokeness as a religion. I proposed a thesis and independent study on musical subcultures as parallels of religious, sectarian, tribal warfare.
Sure.
And so
absolutely.
Everything that people do with music, and this is also a great segue ultimately to get to where we're going with Schultz and hip hop, all these musical groups and the way that kids, youth, adolescents, they dress, they mark themselves, they want to be stereotyped as, I'm a skater kid, I love punk, I'm a b-boy, I love reggae, right? I'm into heavy metal, and I'm got my, all my, that always bugged me as a teenager. It bugged me, and it certainly bugs me now. But people have always wanted to organize this way. So I notice in these little discussions with these parents who I love talking to, right? But there are these little, they're mostly women, they're mostly moms. There are often these little subtle, how like when like a dog that keeps sheep in the pen will use its nose to kind of to nudge them back into the pen. There's
Sure.
little flares that they send up to try to sort of establish the parameters around how we all think this way, right? And I can't really come up with a good example, but there's a lot of that. And if you're not a person that just swallows all of that hook, line, and sinker, it's a little stressful because it's like, well, what is the line between me being who I am versus me just sort of creating trouble in a way that's unnecessary? You know what I mean? Or me making waves in a way that's unnecessary. And it's a constant sort of negotiation between those two things.
And the societal pressure, right? So like it's sort of it goes back to grade school, right? It's it's me wearing bobos, and the kid's like, I got Nikes. Where's your Nikes? And making fun of the kids that wear bobos. Now, at 40, I don't care. I wear my bobos. My dad's shoes are comfortable. I don't care. There is a larger societal drive and expectation that if you are in a certain group, that you have certain you're supposed to have a certain set of beliefs and perspectives, and in that those beliefs and perspectives should be easily understood it's not something that's said aloud. It's presumed.
It's presumed and subliminally reinforced almost all the time, without
So
even people, I think, even being aware that that's what they're doing when they're doing it. You talked about growing up. One of the things I hated about growing up in the inner city, what we would have called the
Mhm.
ghetto back,
Sure.
the people that lived in my neighborhood, we would have just called it the ghetto,
Yeah.
was every summer there's a new haircut that's in style, there's a new set of
Of course.
kicks, sneakers, new
Always.
apparel, right? Because you've got to get poor people to spend their fucking money on keeping up with the Joneses. And also, to be fair, this is a holdover from African American and Latin culture that does put a value on how you dress and how you present yourself. I think that would be there without capitalist pressure.
Sure.
But the kids, new haircut, new clothing. I remember when gazelles were in style, like those glasses, those like Run
Mhm.
DMC glasses,
Sure.
new sneakers, and a new like installed set of slang every year or
Yes.
two. There'd be new terms that you had to be up on. And I remember being like 12, 13, 14, I fucking hated this. I hate that is enforced. It's expected, it's patrolled for you to keep up with it. And, to this day, people talk about this all the time. I see so many documentaries about heavy metal bands are like, oh, heavy metal is a worldwide brotherhood. Get the fuck out of here with that, right? I cannot stand it, the expectation that because I listen to this kind of music, I'm supposed to outwardly signal so that from a block away, you can see, oh, this is that type of person, and we're all a
Mhm.
worldwide. Get the fuck out of here. I've met a lot of dumb fucks who love heavy metal or who I don't feel any affinity with whatsoever. Don't presume to put me in your like global tribe. Fuck you. Like, to me, I hate that feeling of being wrangled into something. So it's so fascinating. This plays out with music, and now that we're seeing this online with politics and stuff like that, it's like
Mhm.
clearly we crave this, and we've got to figure out a way to coexist and somehow work around that, somehow get into ourselves. Because Jonathan Haidt said, and I don't know how accurate this is, but he said, we weren't really meant to be aware of more than about 150 people. Do we know who Thick Lizzy is? I love Thick Lizzy's comments.
Yeah, I don't know, Thick Lizzy. What's up? Shout out to Thick Lizzy. He says,
that-
"Metal world order. It takes a global village."
Yeah, well, you're kicking me out of that global village. I don't know if that's AI Thick Lizzy or Al Overa.
I have no idea.
Well,
But
I mean, but Jonathan Haidt said, are we really meant to be aware of more than around a maximum of 150 people? So we're used to clustering in these small groups that are our shelter, that our survival depended on. So you just slide into the mores and expectations of that group without giving any thought to why.
mhm.
I don't know if I completely took us off course, but
No. You didn't. Actually, this has been, I think, really focused, and this will set up the Schultz thing really well. I wanted, but I wanted to hit the other thing that from your setup as you described, you know, being invited into this group of people who made all these presumptions about you, your kid, and your place in society, your point of view, everything, right?
Mhm.
They made all these presumptions. Did they say it out loud? Probably not. But they're like, oh, that person is kind of like us, or this person kind of believes what we believe. Therefore, we are going to invite this person into our little in-person wedge. And my kid goes to this. If a person goes to this school with my if a family puts their kid in this school, they must believe X.
Or even
and
if you
then
gravitated to our little pod to begin with, you must be
you must
you
be.
must you must think Proposition 1 is a good idea. You must be tolerant. You must be, you must not be a Trumper. And, the whole thing that started this off was one of them group texted, well, my condolences the morning after the election when the results had been
Yeah.
announced. My condolences, I for all of we must all be waking up in mourning or something. And I was like,
Mhm.
well,
Of course.
what are we doing here?
Well,
Kind of.
well, because it's incredibly human. It's inherently human to believe that you're, I speak to another one of my posts, my after Thanksgiving post about mixed company, and I like mixed company. I like being around, like you and I. We agree on a lot of stuff, but there's stuff we don't agree on.
Of
We've been
course.
arguing since the day we met. All right, all right, all right. Literally.
But more precisely, we are in mixed company, or I feel I am in mixed company wherever I go. So
Yeah.
that is the default
Same
position for
here.
me, right?
Same
So,
here. I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're absolutely right. I think that odds are the people in this group feel like, and I think most people in their little world, because we've resorted our America, right? We've moved to, and I mean literally over the last 8-9 years, we've chosen to resettle in different neighborhoods, different states, different cities, different parts of the country that we feel reflect us as people.
mm-hmm.
All right. So that's why blue states are getting bluer and red states are getting redder. That's why the red parts of states are getting redder and blue parts of states are getting bluer, because we have chosen to put ourselves in places where we feel reflect the worldview that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So when you end up in a pod with a bunch of parents who've all chosen to, or you presume, have all chosen to put their kid in that school and hang out with us, the presumption, incredibly human, and then totally blown up by the tension over the last decade or so, and even more intensely over the last year or so.
Mm-hmm.
Your thought is like, oh, this person will, of course they're in mourning because Donald Trump won. They can't not have an opinion. They can't have a centrist opinion. They can't have a pro-Trump opinion. They have to have the opinion that is pre-approved because they're in my space. They are in my in-person world. That's one half of it. The other half of it is the part that I loved when you described interacting with the person who's in the as uh, as someone described to me, was sort of an interfaith marriage in terms of politics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And I've had a few of them, and those are the best in terms of conversation. You actually have, because you actually have to find a way to communicate and communicate across that gulf.
Well, they were having
And
trouble, I should say.
yeah.
But I did reassure the mom that I met. I said, kudos to you. You're doing something to keep this. You guys are doing something to keep this going. And yes, I hear you that this is a tricky thing, and it's bumpy at times, but I really applaud you for being able to coexist this way. But yeah, I like the description interfaith marriage. One of the things I absorbed as a kid, because like you, I love mixed company. For me, it's more of a one-on-one. Like I'm just inherently curious. So just the range of guests and people that I like to
Mhm.
talk to reflects that curiosity. And the fact that I'll go from like, this is something I noticed, right? I'll go from talking to one type of person and then later the same day, interview somebody else, and that
Love it.
feeds something. I don't
It's the
think I
best.
am as yes, that's something that really I was like, "Oh, wow, okay, I noticed that's sort of my pattern," right? Um, I need to be in these sort of different domains where different areas of my mind are turning. I don't think I am as open to mixed company as I like to think I am, though. I do think I
Mhm,
have a certain type of person that I feel safest kind of gravitating to, right? So it's not
mhm,
just them presuming about me, it's me presuming about them too,
without a doubt.
right? I don't think my social circle reflects as much broadness of point of view as I would like. But
Agreed.
in terms of my mental curiosity, it is very I do love talking to different people, right? If I could have a magic wand and like pick and you saw the different picks, it'd be a lot like yours. It'd be like, oh, do you want to go talk to Assad right now? Yes, I'd be scared to, but I would. Do you want to go talk to Mike
Yeah.
Tyson the next day? Yes, I'd be nervous to, but I would, right? Something would draw me to that, sort of out of my safe zone to do that. But when I was young, I could feel, and at a certain point, I was able to say this out loud. People who can, bel- um, who can be a card-carrying member of a group because they have the outer markings, whether that's racial, physiological characteristics, or, as you said, dress, whatever. They are inherently lazy because belonging to that group, I always felt they didn't really feel a need to try to go anywhere else to fit in. They already had a home base of people. And I could feel that so strongly as a kid, like, man, I have to fucking step over this barrier with whoever I talk to. You don't have to do that, and you're kind of like stewing in your own lack of a challenge.
This speaks to one of my theories, and also it ties in directly to Schultz too, I think. One of my theories of why conservative media has profited mightily, it's
Mm,
because they had to.
mm,
If you are on the left side of the aisle, if you're a progressive, you might look at the New York Times and snicker. You might not agree with it entirely, but it's not contradictory to your worldview.
mhm,
All right. Um, I was listening to an entrepreneur um, talk about why he started out, and he said, "Well, look, I had a good paying job, but I felt like I didn't fit in this world, so I needed to create a world that I fit in." All right, and I think that's what happens with media, and I think that's what happens with social circles, and why we are resorting ourselves. I think it's sort of, hey, I feel kind of lonely in this world that I'm in. I'm going to put myself in the world that we're in, that I feel less lonely in. And when that person picks up the New York Times, when they look at CNN or MSNBC, they might see a exaggerated version of themselves, but they see themselves. When a person on the conservative side of the aisle looks at these people, they're like, I don't see myself at all in the New York Times. I don't see myself at all in CNN at all. So that's why I think outlets like the Daily Wire, outlets like The Blaze, that's why Fox News have profited and grown so big, because hey, they did these other people in this already established organism don't see themselves at all.
mhm,
And to apply to the whole Schultz situation, um, broadly. he was invited into this sort of insular black minority based world. He got the cosign from Charlemagne the God, and he's profited mightily by, overlapping with that audience and growing outside of it. Like, I think anyone who said that he's just coasting off Charlemagne the God is they're fooling themselves. Or they're not paying attention to Flagrant. Like, Flagrant is not, or his stand up.
I was gonna say, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
So he overlapped with that audience and grew a whole world outside of it. All right, but he's still a part of that audience. Like, part of that audience is a core of what he built. But there was a certain expectations of white people and Jewish people once they're invited into this sort of temple of hip hop kind of online world and in person world, that they're supposed to hold the black people, for the most part, it's not just black people, but for the most part black people, with a certain level of reverence. Hence Eminem's I think it was Rock and Roll Hall of Fame speech, which I thought was, heartfelt. I think he actually does, respect Rakim and LL Cool J and the 50,000 people he mentioned. I think he actually
but
does.
It's compulsory. Yes, but it's compulsory. It is. I'm glad you said Temple of Hip Hop, and I don't mean to interrupt and throw your train of thought. But I want to point out, it's compulsory. He that is a religious gesture.
Yeah, it is. That it's an expectation. It's taking your feet off before you enter the mosque. Not your feet off, but your shoes off.
Yes, yeah, I know what you. Yes.
You don't take your feet off before you enter a mosque. But it's taking your shoes off before you enter a mosque. It's wearing what's the thing that Jewish folks wear?
Yarmulke.
Yarmulke. It's wearing a yarmulke. It's dressing up before you walk into a black church, wearing a tie and suit or a dress. My mom hated pantyhose. She would wear pantyhose going into church. She would dress up. We had very little money growing up. She would spend time, and she had very little time, and she had a ton of us. But she would press. We would dress to impress, just to walk into this black church. So there were expectations of sharing this social environment, much like there were expectations for you by being around this group of people. Like, who they expected that your opinions and your thoughts and your approach to the world would match theirs.
Yeah, we'll just slot in. Yeah.
And I think there's an expectation for especially white folks who go into that temple of hip hop online and profit off of it for them. And he said what he said. And if you don't mind elaborating on what he said.
Sure. So let me set this up. So I think it was this past summer, Andrew Schultz, the comedian and host of Flagrant 2, we reference him a lot on this show, had as guests these two black British podcasters who host a show named Shits and Gigs. And they were talking about, I think it was like dating black women. One of them was just speaking, and he said, is that because, or maybe he was talking about like white guys dating black women. Oh, they were talking about the glow up effect. Okay, right. So like the Travis Kelce's, when he's had black girlfriends, he, his style changes and he glows up. And then when he has a white girlfriend, his style is different. So Andrew chimed in with a joke and said, do they grow their hair out because they don't want to get the shit slapped out of them or something, so that they can, there's a buffer that it won't hurt as much, or, they won't get hurt when they get slapped. Playing on the idea of the black woman as tougher, as more emotionally reactive. The two Shits and Gigs guys laughed at it. they got a ream of, hassle flack from their audience. So then they retracted, they issued this video statement, and they actually claimed that they had PTSD, and that no, not PTSD, that it was fight or flight, that it was so traumatic, the situation they were in, they didn't know. Oh my God, how do you react? So I had to laugh and then your guys, Abba and Preach, my guy, Marcellus Wiley, dug up some footage of them. They were making the same kind of jokes on their show long before this happened. They were joking about black women being all reactive. Okay, we'll get back to that in a moment, because I think that you correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that premise of, black women being more tending to be, or African American women specifically, tending to be more demonstrative, loud, in your face, and not taking any guff from you? Isn't that the premise of so many black comedians' acts? I'll leave that to you
A
to
ton.
answer. What's that?
A ton.
Okay.
Almost every black comedian.
So, hey, sweetie, could you get me a ginger beer?
Sure. I'm just playing school with Matt.
Okay, I'm on the call. Could you just give me a ginger beer? Thank you.
Cameo from from Mini Savvy.
Notice I completely shut down when she was about to explain. I was like, I just need. Okay, so then Kendrick comes out with a bar in one of his recent songs. Is this off his latest album? His new one?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, we should know this, right? But
yeah.
Talks about white comedians. Well, he chastises black men who sit and watch while white comedians joke about at the expense of black women. So Gary Owen, the white comedian, who is actually married to a black woman, and I believe very well received among black audiences. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. Gary Owen responds, but then Andrew Schultz responds, and we don't have the clip. I should have sent it to you, but he's with his flagrant crew. So there's Akash, Alex, and I always forget the fourth guy's name.
Marky Gagnon.
Right, Mark, right, okay. So Andrew's like, yeah, thank goodness that rappers are there to tell us how to be respectful of black women, because I mean, nobody has been more respectful of black women than rappers. I mean, good thing they're there to tell me not to make a joke about black women annoying their husbands, right? I think this is beyond a fair point. This is like hitting the bullseye on the ridiculousness of a rapper chastising him about how somehow, Kendrick, who I think has this sort of God complex thing going on, has
I think I got it.
Okay.
I think I got it.
The dominion to kind of set the parameters for what a whole group of people can say, right? He's like, I hereby decree in the temple of hip hop, and I'm so glad you used that term, hereby decree that all the black men who see this happening, you must stand in and check these guys from making a joke like that. And Andrew's point is, because I got lyrical references for you, I have them ready for you, okay? For this to come from a rapper is completely and utterly absurd. But then he goes a step further. And makes a joke about how Kendrick is so short that if they were in prison together, Andrew would rape him, which was clearly in jest. And then so not only was his doubling down on the joking about black women, not only was there a punitive backlash and what I call hormoning response to that. People were all in a tizzy that he shouldn't be allowed to, and we've got to, and Ryan Clark and all these people were like, but like yes, when you're in black spaces and we've got to check him for demeaning black women, right? Which I don't think that's what he was doing. Not only that, then you turn around and say that you're going to rape this rapper. Whoo, forget about it. I wonder if this isn't his Skip Bayless moment where he's going to lose his black audience card, basically, for good.
I don't think so. But you want me to share the clip?
Please.
Do you see it?
Yes, I do.
Rappers are telling comedians we need to be more respectful to women. So we gotta sit back and reflect.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
They're the most pious group.
Listen, nobody has respected women more
Yeah.
through art
Yes.
than rappers. Okay?
Absolutely.
So I completely understand how a rapper could look at a comedian telling a joke and be like, yo, y'all need to switch that shit up.
Yeah.
How dare y'all keep saying your wives are annoying? Be more like us, and bitches ain't nothing but hoes and tricks. I beat my bitch with a stick. What? You can lick on the nuts or suck the dick. I beat my bitch with a stick. What? That's a real lyric.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a real lyric from music that protects women. for decades, protects women. And listen, right now the guy on top, Kung Fu Kenny,
He is the guy on top.
He is the guy.
he is making sure that comedians, he put a law in.
Yeah.
He put a law in place. All right, let's see the exact line, okay? Don't let no white comedian talk about no black woman. That's law. Now, technically speaking, if we're going off of grammatic English,
Okay.
he's saying, I can talk about black women, and that is law.
Don't let no white comedian talk about no black
So he's
women.
basically saying all white comedians
Are only allowed to
talk about black women.
exclusively.
That's what I'm talking about.
We're
Kendrick.
back. We're back.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's a law.
Finally, he understands
It's a
it.
law.
Now I understand why he's doing a comedy with the South Park creators.
Oh, that makes
Because
sense.
he appreciates white comedians that make fun of black people.
There you go.
And they've done that brilliantly for decades.
Yeah, that's true.
And he would never want to, break one of his own laws.
No, that's true.
I mean, didn't they have a character called Token on the South Park show?
Yeah, they do.
Which I'm sure Kendrick is a big fan of.
That's true.
He must be a big
That's
fan if he's
true.
going to do a comedy with them. I mean, we can look that up. Apparently, he has a comedy coming out.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fact.
But Al, you're getting groomed right now. We need to ungroom.
Yeah, you are.
We need to ungroom you right now.
Let's see.
Okay?
Let's see.
I mean that, listen, because he sent people, he says slide on. What he said, slide, where's the line? Okay, the N-words that coon, the N-words that being groomed, slide on both of them. Whoa, that seems like a call to violence.
It does.
Why would he call to, if he's about protecting black people, why would the call to violence be towards the black dudes, not the white guy making the joke?
Well, you gotta understand.
What?
Well, no. You gotta understand.
I snitch. I cooperate. I tell.
Litigation.
Okay? You will squabble up in a jail cell.
I want me to
Preach.
go.
No, yes, please keep going.
What you gotta understand about Kendrick, it's very important to him to protect black women. That's why he's never done a song with an abuser confirmed. He's never done a song with anybody that's suspected of abuse. He's never threatened to remove his music from Spotify because they removed R. Kelly's music, who for sure fucked and held captive underage black women.
Hold on.
This is all very important to Kendrick.
Wait a minute, just let me understand what's going on here, because I think that you're using sarcasm as a comedic device.
It is a comedic device.
But you're so fucking smart right now that I don't know if you're serious or making jokes. Are you saying that Kendrick Lamar put it on wax that he is protecting black women from white comedians' jokes, but not the kidnapping, molestation, and of R. Kelly? And in actually, reality, he would take his own music off Spotify to protect R. Kelly?
Yeah.
Someone who's kidnapped,
a sexual
molested,
predator,
and black women?
Oof, children.
Are you saying that he's done songs with other men who have potentially put hands on black
Not
women?
potentially, confirmed.
Wait a minute, convicted?
Yeah, I don't know what you call Chris Brown, but yeah, whatever that is.
Not breezy. Not breezy. I took a picture with Chris Brown. Hey, bro, I took a picture with him immediately.
Can I tell you something?
Yes.
We ain't protecting nobody. Y'all can protect your fucking self.
Everybody gets these jokes over here.
Wait, what did he say? We ain't protecting nobody. Why don't you protect your fucking self?
Want me to back up 10 seconds?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what you call Chris Brown, but yeah, whatever that is.
Not breezy. Not breezy. I took a picture with Chris Brown. Hey, bro, I took a picture with him immediately.
Can I tell you something?
Yes.
We ain't protecting nobody. Y'all can protect your fucking self.
Everybody
Y'all can
gets
protect your
these
fuck-
jokes over here.
Okay. Y'all can protect your fucking self.
That's the weakest part of his argument there, I thought. But go ahead.
But my response is, number one, where's the lie? Number two, preach.
Yeah. I mean, look, I had not, I'd heard about the clip. I hadn't seen it till now. There's not a whole lot of lies there.
Nothing. There's no lie there.
There's sort of exaggeration. There's sort of like comedian enlarging of such. But yeah, he did do songs with Chris Brown. He's done songs with I believe Jay-Z as well, who's facing a ton of allegations right now, including one with about I believe what was it, a 13-year-old girl, or was it a 14-year-old girl?
13. Civil.
Yeah, it was a civil allegation.
Right.
We'll see if it becomes criminal. These kinds of things tend not to. Once the criminal, if it's going to happen, it usually happens first. But yeah, look, I thought he made a bunch of solid points. I don't feel like, I don't think this will cost him fans though.
I mean, it's garnered a lot of threats.
Doesn't matter.
A lot of there's definitely been a backlash. I do think he's lost certain people in public figures in that sphere who want to make a show of making an example of him. DL Hughley, our guy, is
he never had DL. He never had DL. DL, look. I respect what DL has created.
Speaking of echo chamber, holy shit.
Multiple echo chamber on top of echo chamber on top of echo chamber. That's DL.
Like, look, let me DL bang my head in this metal tube and hear it echo.
Yeah, look. I think the people who, I think there's multiple factors in play. One, I think the people who really care about this, who are really like so offended by Schultz,
wouldn't have liked his comedy to begin with.
Yeah. And secondly, it's kind of like and I'm not I have to in terms of analysis, but putting the Louis C.K. scenario here. Louis been able to rebuild his world because he's got a direct pipe to the people.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who love what he does. So I believe that in this era, losing peripheral people, as long as you can talk directly to your core, you can lose all the peripheral people you want. It's your core that drives you. It's your core that keeps you relevant. It's your core that fills out the theaters that you play in. It's not the peripheral who are angry about one thing, justifiably or not.
I have a question though. You can keep your core audience, but can you keep your self and your act intact? Louis C.K.'s act has not been the same since. It's bitter.
Yeah, I've never
got a completely different tone to it. He has clearly been affected by his public rejection, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. I don't know. I think so. At a certain point, I believe he was talking to Charlemagne side by side.
Want me to look for that one?
If you like, because there's a few of him responding. And then he doubled down on this, which I applaud. But then he said, Kendrick is so short, he's so little, that if we were in a jail cell, I'd rape him and he wouldn't be able to stop me. And that was like throwing gasoline on something he had just thrown gasoline on. And so that has obviously triggered a strong response. Matt Barnes did his usual thing where he's got a clip saying, I wish you and your family all the safety, like basically cheerleading the idea that people might harm him. Andrew. Matt Barnes has done this for multiple people before. He did this for Skip Bayless. He did this for Shannon Sharp. He gets on there and he kind of announces himself as like, oh, I'm the one who's going to announce to you that you're in danger. And guess what? Wink, wink. I'm kind of psyched that you are because you should be punished. I don't understand where this comes from with Matt Barnes because is he about that?
No, he's not.
Maybe he should, and he's like, you crossed the line, bro. You crossed the line. You're clout chasing. He's talking about he's clout chasing to talk about a clip not involving him at all. He's accusing Andrew Schultz of clout chasing, talking about Kendrick. And then he's like, you crossed the line. It's like, well, my question to Matt Barnes would be, did you cross the line when you got in that kid's face at your kid's game, when you got in that kid official or the kid at the table keeping score, right? When you got all in his face? What if his father was like an MMA guy and could beat the living shit out of you and said, you crossed the line when you got in my son's face? How would you feel then? Would we be saying, like, why do people feel the need to patrol hip hop so much that, oh my God, he said this about Kendrick, he's got to be hurt for it? Well, why does somebody like Matt Barnes put his little like volunteer police force star on for that, his little badge? Yes, you think this is all silly noise, media noise?
Well, I think it ties into everything we talked about today so far.
Everything,
yes, in that he feels like there's the profit motive. Yes, he thinks it grows its audience by in the social media sense. It does by what was the term I heard? Basically, like, I forget what it is, but growth hacking. That essentially it grow by jumping on a hot topic and talking about it loudly and abrasively. You gain steam audience wise.
Well, it's not helping us.
No, it's helped me.
Okay, good.
I mean, look, once we got on here and started yammering and then chopping it in pieces, I think it's helped you too.
Okay, good.
I mean, my, the size of my YouTube, which was meager, it was around 300. It's now 1,400.
Nice.
Like, and I'm not doing this every week. Maybe I should. Like, if I did this every week, then it'd probably keep growing faster.
Listen, everyone counts. It's not about the size, it's about the quality. I mean, Matt Barnes is somebody I would want to interview, but I would ask him these questions. It's like, well, why do you feel motivated to show fealty to this like street code? How much were you actually even a part of that? That are you compensating because you're hosting a show with Steven Jackson, who did grow up in that mentality, much closer.
He's probably compensating, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, so why are you cheerleading violence? He did this with Shannon Sharp, did this with Skip Bayless. Now he's doing it with Andrew Schultz, and he did it with one more. Oh, Whitlock also, because Whitlock had the audacity to say things about Kobe. Like, come on, man. Like what are we? And this ties into the hip hop thing, because if you care to show the slide, I texted you and emailed you of a piece I'm writing.
Yeah, I haven't downloaded it.
We are all
via email.
I also texted you.
Yeah, texting doesn't help.
Okay. I emailed it to you.
You did?
But, yeah, I did. I emailed it to you. But we're all.
Is it the slide?
It's just a JPEG of a screenshot of.
Okay. Let me see what I can do.
I'm working on.
Okay.
But we're all held hostage. This country, this society is held hostage by this idea that has constantly been perpetuated by hip hop culture, that when you are slighted, you respond with violence. This doesn't just affect people in ghettos. This is something that has spilled out to all of us. And when does this stop? So Schultz made a huge error, I think, a grave error, by saying that about Kendrick, because that hits to this like macho sense of manhood that, oh my God, he talked about sexually violating him, to the point where Ice Cube's son responds to what Andrew Schultz said. But Ice Cube has a song on America's Most Wanted where he contemplates, or at least the protagonist of the song contemplates, kicking a girl in the stomach who he got pregnant, or forcing an abortion on her with a wire hanger, or killing her if she goes to term with the baby. So now that was 35 years ago. or whatever, 33 years ago. I'm sure Ice Cube has evolved since then. But then Ice Cube jumps in and says, is he really talking about having sex with K-Dot, with Kendrick? It's like what Akash said. Why don't y'all protect yourselves? If you're going to police anybody, why don't you start there? NWA on their second album, I know Ice Cube is not on that album, but on their second album, they have a song where Dre talks about forcing women, maybe not forcing, but basically coercing women into prostitution. And if they don't have his money, he's going to have his boys gang rape them and then strap her to a chair and shoot her to death. Again, it's a long time ago. That's 1991. I'm sure these people have evolved since they made this music, and I'm all about absolute freedom of speech with that. I listened to both of those albums I talked about, I should mention, right? But, I mean, come on, man. So you're going to chastise a white comedian. And I'm not saying Kendrick's lyrics are different, right? We're not putting them in the same category. But comedians are going to respond. They're going to feel that, and they're going to go, no, we have the right to say whatever the fuck we want. I really wonder what Patrice would have said to this whole situation.
I think I think he'd have a response similar to this, where I think he would defend the comedian. He would also point out that, like, the code of man to man, even the joke about R-wording a man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That well, more than sodomizing. I mean, like, this is like, about forcing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think he would that there would be some consequences with that. I think he'd do both.
Interesting.
And look, I think this, like, I usually see this kind of circumstance as pro wrestling, as you said earlier, that a lot of this is fake. I think the thing that gets beyond fake is the sort of echo chamber bubble kind of thing, and the fact that in hip hop, in particular, you end up with moments where people step to people, and they step to people on behalf of people, for ridiculous things and ridiculous reasons. That's relatively common.
So is dying from that. So is actual death from that.
I mean, I wouldn't say that's common, but I'd say it happens. Yeah,
it's common enough. I mean, there's lots of rappers who've been shot and you'll go to jail and prison. I mean, and why are we still there?
I think it's the same. It goes back to your little pod, and you're in them sort of rejecting you for not staying on code.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So elementary school, suburban, mostly white moms and rappers.
Yes.
Be careful what you say now, because they could get really, really triggered about that too. I mean, look, if you're secure in your manhood, if he had said this to, what's his name? I mean, this is a bad example. If he had said this to Joe Rogan, if he had joked like that to Joe Rogan would have laughed it off because Joe Rogan is secure in his manhood.
Yeah.
You don't have to respond or say anything. He's like, well, you're not going to rape me. I know this. Ha ha ha. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Laugh all you want. Like this incessant need to prove one's manhood is not only pathetic and unconvincing, but it's a real social pathology.
I think there's some truth to that, for sure. That it's a social pathology that I mean, there's been plenty of research on this, with Black men in particular, but I think you could extend it to Hispanic, I think, as well, in a different
yeah.
different way, different guys. And I think people have and
You
I
mean
think of
knives
also
instead of guns? Oh my God, did I just say that?
or what was it, the Thomas Sowell book, white rednecks and black rednecks and white liberals.
Mhm.
In his thesis that essentially cast that as a class thing, essentially. I mean, we could go in deeper. I mean, it's a fantastic book that I thought that of maybe doing a chapter by chapter breakdown on here about, because it's amazing. And that he goes back and traces sort of the Southern slave, poor white culture of mostly European and mostly
Great Britain. He said,
UK,
he said Scotland and England. Yes. He said black American slang comes from the British Isles.
And not beyond slang, not just slang, but a lot of the behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in terms of how we carry ourselves, this sort of the quick to anger over certain things. And while it's not a 100%, because nothing is, but it's certainly a range true in terms of sort of growing up in the hoods I grew up in. And from the way you're nodding, I would imagine similarly to you.
Yeah, it wasn't as severe, like it wasn't as to that extreme where I grew, like in the on my block, but it was around us for sure.
So it was pretty extreme in some of the blocks I lived in.
And I mean, you were, there's a baseline expectation that you had to be able to prevent somebody from disrespecting you by, there wasn't much gunplay among my like specific like group. There wasn't a lot of that like in our block, like immediate area. There were blocks, like if you went one street over, actually, if not one street over, if you went one block over, it was a big crack spot with a lot of young kids who were dealing in this one building, but not among my friends so much. So, but yeah, it's on that continuum for sure. And I think that soul concept is such an interesting place to start, because it opens the possibility that none of this is exactly what it appears to be, right? Because so many, you get into Camille Foster's idea of what is black, right? So many people, like if you watch All the Smoke, Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes and so many of these hip hop artists, they're like, are you a real one? They're so invested in the idea of what they think blackness is. And what if that comes from a completely different place than they have even conceived of?
Take that lens, zoom out, or just pan over society. And I think you see how social groups operate. It's, hey, are you a real one? I mean, you are in our group text. I mean, Donald Trump won. I'm apoplectic. Everyone in my group text has to agree with me. Are you a real one? I mean, you're on our streets. Like you must believe that Prop 1 was a great idea. By the way, you must believe that some science is right. The science is right, but not science.
Yeah, right. Yes. Thank you.
Science. You have to, like, it's a microcosm of how society works. We exist in this echo chamber of echo chamber of echo chamber, and also what's happened online is it's sort of exaggerated it further.
Oh yeah,
and we go through these periods of times where we are, where it's the ups, the us versus them is intensified, and that's where we are now for sure.
Neil Howell.
And yeah. I'm gonna get a Neil Howell button. Yeah. And I think that's what's going on. I think that's what that says why the reaction to Schultz was the reaction to Schultz. I think you're right in that he should tread lightly in the world, at least in the part of his fan base, that there could be, some trouble for brilliant idiots as a concept in Charlemagne. I think they were already. I think they were already peeling apart anyway. I mean, just watching them the last few years, it seems like they're off in different directions. I think Charlemagne wants to be, Oprah, and I think that Schultz has created. From what I last saw, numbers wise, flagrant matches, brilliant idiots. I mean, it's not.
But
there's not much of a difference in terms of the scope of the show.
Charlemagne so far has defended him.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many black comedians will defend him or have. I don't remember the name of the comedian who joked about George Floyd and these black women walked out on his show, and I didn't find the joke funny. I thought it was actually like, holy shit. But he was on Willie D of the Ghetto Boys' podcast, and he said, I'm always going to defend the comedian. And I'm sure that guy is defending Schultz.
Sure.
But I wonder could this escalate into some real, could he be harmed or killed for this? And he probably could. I don't think
he could.
Not for the laughing the joke about black women, but all of a sudden, oh, now you're saying that you're going to take someone's manhood and blah blah blah. I think so.
Oh well, he could, but he won't. I think I can confidently say that.
Okay.
I think he is. How should I say this? I think that like I think he's not foolish enough to I think this is a corporate fight.
Interesting.
And I think it's a corporate fight with the patina of are you a real one? But it's a corporate fight. Could some fanatical Kendrick fan, pop off and go after him? Sure. But I don't think that that's what's going to happen.
But why are we even there? This is my thing, and this is where the slide of the piece I'm working on. I just find this whole premise that American society is held hostage by the glamorization of mostly black on black violence as perpetuated through this one area of pop culture. This constant reinforcement of these ideas, of these scenarios of fetishizing gunplay and all of this stuff, murder, criminality. Yes, I know I sound like someone's grandmother. I know I sound like PMRC. We have to separate the music. I think the music is obviously this incredible asset to American culture. But why does this one representation of that dominate so much, and why are we so tolerant of it? Why does America love these images? Is so in love with these images of black people killing each other, mostly black men killing each other. Why is that so cemented in our mentality, to the point that a pro basketball player, Matt Barnes, would be warning a comedian and like gleefully saying, I hope your family's safe. And then the other time he did that was on Dan Le Batard's show, which somebody should write a hip hop verse about why didn't Dan Le Batard check Matt Barnes? Because Shannon Sharp said he was going to pull up on Mike Epps. There you go. I'm actually nervous to put this out. Now, the blunt fact of the matter, if we're keeping it 100, is very few people will notice this. I don't think this is going to generate outrage because I don't think that many people will see it. But that's the piece I'm working on. By the way, I love that picture of NWA. It's layered. My piece is not just a screed against hip hop or against what they brought into public consciousness. I actually appreciate when they came on the scene. I remember thinking America needs to have our noses rubbed in this. And they actually at the time admitted, there's an interview clip that I love watching of them. They weren't in gangster. Eazy-E was a drug dealer. That's one thing. The rest of those guys were playing a part and they admitted it. They weren't acting like, oh, we're really about this. Right. So I thought, okay, this is important, but we're now 35 years, almost 40 years after the fact. And what these guys were depicting as a kind of fictitious window into the truth has now become more of the truth. Like art imitated life, imitating art, imitating life. Now people in hip hop aspire to be this thing, kind of like the movie The Godfather, like influenced the mob behave, like the way the mob behaved because they saw that, right? That's where we're at. And I just wonder, when do we get off this train?
Why does America love Black gangster culture and behavior? Why does America love The Godfather and Black and white gangster behavior? Well, America loves caricatures
and outlaws.
They love outlaws.
But a caricature of an outlaw is the best, right?
Yes. And I don't think it's strictly American, but I think it's largely part of our psyche. It helps us be able to process the world by clumping personality traits into a person and gross generalizing people into one point of view, into one exaggerated funhouse mirror version of who a group is. It's much harder to have that in-person person-to-person understanding of all the shades of blue. It's much more easy to assume that all shades of blue are the same. And I think what happens in media is you need to create things that can be accepted and instantly injected into your system of your audience. And what's the easiest way to do it? Through a caricature. And that could be, the certain language, clothing, dress, food, a Black toughness. It could be there's a certain perspective of what a woman should be. We have a certain lens of what they should look like. Like if you closed your eyes right now, you have a vision of what you feel a woman is in terms of of how they dress, how they carry themselves. Do they wear makeup? Do they not? You know, like there's a
Fragrance,
whole
too.
fragrance. This whole thing. There's a whole thing in terms of what a businessman is and what it's not. There's become a thing of what a Silicon Valley businessman is and what they're not. Like there's sort of like what we do is we build these effigies of different archetypes throughout society, and people want to be that thing, whatever it is. You know, the fuck you flip flops. You know, I work in a government organization, and all of a sudden I was talking to an old guy who'd been there for a long time. He was telling me how the style has changed, how it's sort of there was a vision of it that was once suits and ties and perfectly coiffed. Now it's sort of in dress shoes. Now it's sort of more of a polo or khaki in sneakers, and the only the top end people are rolling around in the dress shoes and suits and ties. And there, what you're describing here in terms of our attractiveness to these is our need for belonging and need for definition, and of both ourselves in the world we see around us, which is why I see the intertwine between this whole Schultz situation, the wider political circumstance, and you and your parent group text.
So there's a few things, and I'm surprised this hasn't occurred to me before. I love your idea of the gangster rapper as an effigy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought back while you were talking to John Wayne, but then I thought intermediary, or not the intermediate, but in the middle there between John Wayne and the Wild West and the gangster rapper of, the modern urban ghetto, or the myth of the modern urban ghetto. There's Dirty Harry in there, who is a maverick, is the American archetype of a rule breaker. But what does he break the rules for the rest of us to follow the rules more safely?
Yeah.
And I had never made the connection. I have another Substack piece about hotel trashing rock stars, and it's called "Why Does the Hotel Trashing Rock Star Exist?" And my thesis, the conclusion I come to, is that we, the public, love people who get away with doing things we would never do, so we get the vicarious thrill. But we also look to those people to justify staying within the rules ourselves. We want the rock stars to get punished, to burn out, to become drugged out shells, joke, So we get to go, we get to get off on they threw a TV out of a hotel room, but we know the long leash they have will eventually yank them back into some form of misery. And then we just go about being in our lives the way we always were. I had never made the parallel between the hip hop archetype of the rule breaker, of the fuck you. I remember walking past, and I mentioned this in this piece I'm writing now. I remember walking past the newsstand on my way to school when I was in high school. This was in 1988 when Straight Outta Compton came out. And on the cover of the Village Voice at a news kiosk on the street in Manhattan, it said, "The FBI hates this band." And it had a picture of NWA on it. I remember having this visceral thrill. Like, man, these motherfuckers are tapping into something this whole society is fucking scared of. Like, there's clearly a resistance to this, and they're tapping into something important. And I loved the idea that they were like, no, this is what America created. We're going to fucking rub your noses in it. Right. So whenever I think of them, I think of that. But then it becomes the caricature that everybody, then you, from there on the continuum, you get Rick Ross.
Sure.
Who was a living Effigies of complete fucking cartoon.
Sure.
Right? I'm talking about the rapper Rick Ross, who invented this persona. He might as well fucking be Colonel Sanders, or
sure,
you know, in terms of the role he's playing. And I think that Black unbridled violence is sort of America's last refuge for the rule breaker in this really gross, grotesque way.
Last? No.
Okay, maybe not last, but it is the refuge of the white, over civilized part of America that doesn't have guns, right? That gets this thrill from seeing this exaggerated masculinity and this homicide and all this death and all this glamour. There's something really gross about that to me, that instead of embracing our own sort of collective outlaw spirit, we've relegated it to these people who are, literally killing each other. And then look at that as entertainment. Look, Ice Cube was talking to Bill Maher recently and openly talked about the record label to prison pipeline through this music. I don't think that's something he would have said in 1991.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that I'm trying to say this well. I think there's this sort of I think what's happening is the machine is becoming self-aware. I think we've all been a part of this machine. We've all had this. We've made these assumptions all the time. And what's happened is, as we have a better understanding how the media, cultural communication machine work, and I think the average person has a better idea of it than they did in the past. Once now that the blind trust is gone, I think there's a better understanding. You end up with people saying things that didn't seem plausible years ago. I think that's what happened there with Maher there, and what happens in a lot of places. Now, are they going to tell you the true unvarnished truth? The fact that basically we create effigies throughout society, that there's an effigy of a barista as well.
There's an effigy of a president.
Yeah, there's yes. Well, that was the other thought. Mo Fax came to mind as you were describing. I don't know if you're familiar with Mo Fax. Nope. Mo Fax is he has a great podcast series. He did 100 episodes with Adam Curry called Mo Fax with Adam Curry.
Adam Curry, your guy. Thank you.
My guy, Adam Curry.
Hipping me to. I mean, I remember him from MTV, but I had no idea he was so interesting. Now,
fascinating dude. And Mo Fax still does live streams. He's present on social media, and he mentioned Trumpers. He started calling them orange people. Not black, not white, orange people. that this is a different strain. This is a different effigy
Mm-hmm.
that has been created. It's crude. It's not. It's easy to sort of conceive of digitally, and in person, you don't actually know what the edges of the effigy. It's not fully realized in person. That hints, I think back to your group chat. Like their sense of an orange person is this crude design. It's the the straw man on the pike. It can't possibly be in your world.
Mm-hmm. And it couldn't be thought out. It couldn't be a reflective person. It couldn't be someone they might even be relating to and they don't even know, right? It couldn't be any. It has to be this very specific, this very specific type.
Yeah, and just to that point, it reminds me of a conversation that I had at a dinner, I think maybe a lunch brunch a few weeks ago, where George W. Bush and Donald Trump were brought up, and the assumption was that they're both idiots.
Mm.
You can say a lot about them. Are they Rhodes Scholars? Okay, probably not. Idiots? I wouldn't call them idiots. Like these, they are people with a divergent opinions than this person who was speaking. So, and essentially that's what we do throughout our communication. It's one of our crutches. It's sort of like we just point, that person isn't what we like, therefore they are that effigy, and if that effigy is in sight, we react to that effigy.
Right, there's a shorthand that we all use internally,
culturally. There are different effigies culturally, and there are different tiers of effigies. Like there's an effigy of a UFC fighter.
Mm-hmm.
There's an effigy of a podcaster. But like, even though you could break that down even further, it's like clumps and clumps and clumps, which oddly enough brings my brain back to the whole advertising and media conversation at the very beginning, which is like, hey, advertisers are advertising to an effigy. They're advertising to an outline. They're not advertising to an person. We may actually get to the point where we are, and I think it's quite likely we're going to get down where an ad is tailored specifically for you.
Well, if Elon has his way, it'll be in our brain. It'll be Neuralink.
Well, not just Elon. I mean, there's a whole barrage of people coming up with different ways to, since we've already consented to have all our devices listen to us at all times, there is a wealth of information that can be constructed to design to get that effigy to be filled out with whatever all your dirty habits are and your beliefs and thoughts to sell individually. That's not profitable yet. Therefore, I don't think, until it gets closer to profitability, it probably is not going to happen. But I do expect that in the next 5 to 10 years.
So here's the question. I have 2 questions for you. One,
yeah,
if we are to get to that frontier where things are being tailored to the individual, would people in their virtual space, Neuralinked into their brain, would they still cluster with other effigies, or would they seek a more individuated experience? I have a sense that it's the first one. There's still, even if you had total free reign, you'd basically recreate a fucking mini tribe, even of of like avatars. And
it's what we've done.
My second question is, are you saying that I need to take black rednecks and white liberals into my parent mom group and have that as our book club where we invite O'Shea Jackson Jr. to to lead the discussion.
Absolutely, and I want to document it. Do that today. Oh my God, that would be an amazing miniseries. Amazing.
Or maybe Ice Cube himself could do it. Could.
Yeah. I want to be in that Zoom.
Well, that's for exclusive members only. No.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I should do something like that, and maybe invite a local hip hop artist to be in on it. You know, because those moms would think of the hip hop artist as an effigy. The hip hop artist would probably think of those moms, white suburban moms, as an effigy, right?
Without a doubt.
And where could that possibly cross connect in ways it's like, oh wow, you're not the person I thought. Oh, you're not the person I thought. And this text, which I mean, I could pick both a hip hop artist and the moms who both would recoil even seeing that title right off the bat, right? Who would be like, no, that's I can't go there. Thomas Sowell, no, right? Or have something a little more interesting where it's like there's one heterodox person in each group, right? There's one troublemaker, and then see what happens. Could the seeds of heterodoxy spread? You know, is it contagious in a way? I don't have the answers to these questions, but I'm really tempted with that book.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. In the avatars thing, absolutely. We've already done it. I mean, that's what happened. Like and that's what I was describing essentially earlier. That essentially, instead of tribes of the people around us in our families and connected families, we're tribes of ideology and Pokemon and the tribes within Flagrant 2's audience who are probably at war, right? So like we have self-selected a series of tribes that we are in with people who we mostly don't see every day. And in the people that we do see every day who are a part of that tribe, we don't actually know that they're part of that tribe. Hence the guesswork that happened in your parent group chat. Because they just presumed that tribe was homogeneous.
Right, that we were all going to say, yes, we're in mourning. Oh, isn't that terrible? And then when I spoke up against that, hey, can you give us some time to grieve first?
Yeah. Wow, this went places I did not expect, as this tends to do.
I'm glad to hear that. There's something I forgot to ask you last week that I was really kicking myself as soon as we got off our post-Thanksgiving episode, or maybe that was 2 weeks ago. How do you reconcile the celebration of Thanksgiving with what that represents to Indigenous Americans?
I'm not sure what it represents to Indigenous Americans. I know what I've heard. It's kind of like the Washington Redskins mascot in that, like, yeah, there are some Indigenous Americans. There are some Native Americans, Indians, or whatever you want to call them, who find it offensive. And there are those who don't care. And there's those who do, who care and they don't find it offensive. What I would also say is that it's kind of like with Christmas. Yes, there's a reason for the season, and there's direct Jesus, even though it probably happened in the spring. And yes, even beyond that, it was based on a pagan holiday, from what I understand.
Yeah, the church co-opted the traditions of Yule to try to bring in more constituents from the pagan observers. Yeah.
But the holiday that you and I celebrate, that I hope that we get together to chill in person before or around, is not that holiday. Hasn't been that holiday for a very long time. The holiday that Americans, go spend a bunch of money. I gotta buy a bunch of gifts in the next week or so. Like it's not the same. Much like Thanksgiving is not the same. It's not the same holiday. It's an evolution of it. It has remnants of it, but it's not the same. It's not the same as that incident years and years ago. It's not. It's its own mutation that we actually celebrate. So it's the kind of thing that it speaks to the whole racism conversation in that, like, okay, yes, are there white people who were incredibly racist in segregated society? Sure. I'm not going to debate that. It happened. Absolutely. Does that mean that I should hold anger and frustration toward people who aren't those people, who share some traits with those people? No, because they're not those people. It's a further generation. If you are angry about the first generation of software, but you're taking it out on generation 20, you're essentially being foolish. So I believe that Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, despite what their origins are, these are now, New Year's Eve is a drinking holiday now. It's a football holiday. St. Patrick's Day is no longer about, getting snakes out of Ireland or whatever the fuck that one is about. It's about parades and people being proud of their heritage and people drinking Guinness. Everybody's Irish, whatever. So so I think that these things evolve. They don't stay the same. And if they do, that's a problem. They should evolve. They should change. They should grow. At least that's how I see the world.
Very, very interesting, deep response. And I'm so glad I asked you. I mean, I also think that there's something. So I'm glad you brought up Sowell, because he takes a more, and I really appreciate this, a more detached view of how different societies and cultures collide. And he looks at any one society as an accumulation of a bunch of different instances.
Amen.
Where one group, and I was going to say where one group dominates, but he doesn't even look at it as that's simplistic, right? He thinks there are advantages, or he argues that there are advantages to becoming integrated into the direction of the culture as a whole that you're a part of, and going with that flow instead of, digging your heels in and saying, no, I'm not a part of this.
Because even the digging the heels in is not, you are becoming a part of a new generation of the thing you're digging your heels in to preserve. Stuff doesn't stay the same, whether you want them to or not. Yes, there's an orthodox, version of whatever and everything, but the generations that follow will, just by their nature of coming up through that system, will be different than the people who founded that system, and then go and on and on and on. There's iterations based on that culture that is created, and the effects of the context that they exist in, because the context that they exist in will change as well. That's why you end up with some wild ass stuff for better or worse. I'm not saying, and I'm not putting a good or bad on it, because sometimes that growth isn't good. Sometimes that growth is great. Like and the thing that happens in societies and ecosystems of all types, is that that's happening next to each other. There are orthodox sects, and then there's the next generation. That's hence the there was a orthodoxy back to the election. There was an orthodoxy that especially after Obama was elected, that there would never be another Republican president. That was a wide opinion. It was not, and I'm not joking. There's books on this, especially since the election. Some have resurfaced. I remember hearing about the permanent Democratic majority back as far as college.
What we're hearing now, the Democrats won't recover for 30 years.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be 30 years.
No. But that's it. Now it's the polarities flip of people in the Republican camp are saying, "Oh, Democrats, we got them out. We've got them on outs for the next several election cycles."
Yeah, and it might be several election cycles, but it's not permanent.
It ain't permanent. Right. Don't. Who are you kidding? Right. Yeah.
Yeah. These things aren't permanent. But what could change and what will change is the discourse and the stuff that undergirds the system that it's built on. So whatever the ecosystem we're talking about, you could permanently change that foundation. And then someone will build something on top of that foundation and permanently change it again. Not permanently. Permanent is the wrong word, but will alter it. And you you could argue that the Roosevelt Revolution, and we'll talk about FDR, changed American politics permanently, and I think it did, but it didn't. It changed the trajectory. It grew the size of government. It added a certain a thirst for a social safety net that didn't really exist before. And now that's something that we today are still grappling with. I write about it all the time. That essentially that we have to figure out, okay, how are we going to pay for this? And these were decisions made by FDR. All right. We're talking 90 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you have the Great Society, a similar trajectory change of society. He was a Rooseveltian, but he was the next generation down, and he had an idea. And even in LBJ, I mean, he said it himself. He said that he was going to have black voters for generations. He wasn't wrong. What that essentially black voters were typically not voting for Democrats at that point. And we haven't really ever since, as the Great Society programs came in the 60s and 70s. Then Reagan left a sheen on top of those two sheens, which was okay, big government. Let's pull this back a bit.
A bit.
Because he spent a lot of money, because they all do. Right? They all do. All right. And there was sort of a vibe shift and a fundamental shift in just how politics moved with him. And then it's the kind of thing you build on top of each other. And there's remnants that undergird the ecosystem. But the opportunity for the Democratic Party, much like the opportunity was for Donald Trump and is right now, is, okay, Donald Trump's gonna he's already left a sheen. He has reshaped the foundation like those other cats did. What are you gonna put on top of that? Are you gonna just try to kick ass?
Your MF Doom effect is back on, by the way. Yeah. No.
Cable, but I won't do it right now.
Yeah, maybe like stop your mic on in the interface and then reconnect. There we go.
Give me one moment and then we'll wrap.
Yeah. No, you're good now.
I'm good now?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, you're good. Whatever that was.
Yeah.
No, that's all really, really, really. Yeah, I mean, it's really a lot to chew on there. I mean, right. It's like I'm glad how you went from Thanksgiving to that. There's nothing that's permanent, and it's again a Neil Howe, a little Neil Howe meter. I think we're all lulled into but he did. Whoever Thick Lizzie is, let me know who you are because I love your comments.
Thick Lizzie, shout out to Thick Lizzie. I
would love to know who Thick Lizzie is, whether it's somebody we know or is it just somebody, whatever. Yeah, I mean, we all crave that permanence, don't we? We all crave the sense that we're standing on a solid foundation of a moment, and we take the prejudice of the time we were in through the rest of our lives. We have an effigy of time, even of what our moment in history represents. And as Neil Howe would say, each generation seems like just incapable of looking at it through any other lens other than the time they knew. That's quite fascinating to think of. I love to, I love to just sit with the big giant question mark, where are we going with all this? And to bring this back to what we were talking about before, you were talking about Blue Sky and Effigies. I wonder how the Black presence on Twitter will roll with this. Well, Twitter's going this way. Should we go this way or this way? And we're already seeing different effigies of, the Black conservative, right? The type of YouTuber that's going to talk about, the hyper woke YouTuber that's going to talk about Black spaces and Andrew Schultz shouldn't be demeaning women this way. You could read his joke as a fucking compliment too. That Black women are tougher and white men would shrink and would need a buffer because they can't contend with the toughness. This is something that I asked you at the top. How many Black comedians, that's their whole fucking act, is to explore that space?
A lot that at minimum overlap with that space if they don't live in it,
And so the people who are responding in this sort of knee-jerk, very predictable way is like, yeah, you got to check these white comedians to not allow this, versus the unfiltered. I mean, you and I know of all these Black conservative YouTubes that are just, they don't give a fuck about this kind of thing, and they'll piss all over it and laugh, right?
They're extremes still.
They're what?
They're the extremes.
Right. Where are those different clusters going? And then, how are the heterodox voices in between? Where do they find their way? And heterodoxy became its own effigy for a while. So
yeah,
again,
I think it still is.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to my question: how much do we want the free ranging? How much do we really want a free range, or do we all just love being in our little pen?
We all love being in our little pen. And by the way, our little pen doesn't actually exist. It's mental. It's of our own creation, but we love it.
And we love to do things that spark people to nudge us back into our pen.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Maybe I was acting out just to be nudged back by the suburban moms.
Maybe, or I think I think part of it is sort of wanting to declare who you are, and feeling you probably got comfortable, and
I did.
you felt that they accepted you just for being you. And the thing is, like, they probably accepted you for being, as I the metaphor I used, another effigy is the representative. They have a sense of, oh, this is my cool mixed race friend, and my cool mixed race friend has to agree with me.
My cool mixed race friend wouldn't even want to be around my white ass unless this is their own conception of themselves. I'm not saying they're white ass. I'm saying they view whiteness as an effigy that they need to apologize for.
Yes, some people do.
Right. If it wasn't for me showing fealty to this code, yes and no. I could sense trouble as I was about to. I was like, let me think about this. And the real question here, the meta question, which ties all this together, is: am I attached to playing the role or the effigy of the shit-stained sheep within the pen, who secretly likes being in that pen, but being the one that's off to the side? Is that safest for me? Does this really have nothing to do with their expectations, but is that where I'm most comfortable to push a little, but to be sort of still in the pen?
It's an overlap of them both, right? So it's sort of like, yes, you are comfortable in those spaces, but and the things that come with those spaces, you are comfortable with. The coffee, the smoothies, the
birthday party invitations, and yep.
Yeah, and your kid, I'm assuming, is comfortable there, and some of it is so like you probably like those people culturally, relatively, I would imagine.
Sure.
So like you kind of you like, no one's 100% anything, and no situation is 100% anything, even though we think that we're resorting America, we're going to places that are purely me or purely you or purely whatever. No matter where we go, we're not going to get that.
No, and if something comes up that divides society along a new line, you see a new fault line emerge where people are on opposite sides of it. You saw this after October 6th.
Yes,
within the heterodox.
It's inevitable. Like it's going to happen. It's going to divide. There's going to be the next fault line. There always is one. Sometimes it's minor, like Andrew Schultz. Sometimes it's major, like whether it's the October 7th, or it'll be something entirely else. Like it's sort of what we're doing with these effigies and wanting to be around these effigies and choosing to move ourselves physically among these groups is we're searching for safety.
Mm-hmm.
But safety ain't coming.
Nope. And thank goodness for that. Thank goodness it isn't. We should be grateful it isn't. I was grateful. I know that's a great note to end on, but I was grateful when October 7th happened, because it all of a sudden I had gotten comfortable with all these heterodox voices sort of all pushing in one direction, and then seeing this sudden split. So the lack of safety in that is a good thing. I think we need to embrace that more. And if you don't embrace it, it's coming for you anyway. I hope a bunch more things happen like that in rapid succession that keep shaking up the alliances between people, because I think that's healthy.
Yeah. All right, Sabby, plug away, and we'll move on.
Feedbackdef.substack.com. Also feedbackdef on YouTube. I have an interview coming up. I'm going to knock wood here because it's confirmed that we're going to do it, but I want to knock wood in case, nothing comes and messes it up. But I am going to be interviewing Keith Caputo, aka Mina Caputo, who is the singer of the band Life of Agony, who transitioned from Keith to Mina in 2011 and is now detransitioning, has come out hard, come in hot against gender youth care, is totally pro-Trump. We are going to be talking this coming week. And so I'm going to try to sell that interview, a written piece around that interview to various places, but also going to post it to my YouTube and Substack, and I cannot wait for that. So, provided all goes well, Santa Claus will be arriving early this year for me in terms of that. And I'm totally looking forward to it. I think that's going to be a difficult discussion, even though obviously Keith and I see eye to eye on certain things. I sense it's going to be, I don't like to go in there and just cheerlead people. And on the other hand, I think for that conversation, it's very important that I just lay my cards on the table right from the outset and let Keith and the audience know what my views are on these things. But my views are layered, and I suspect where I'm coming from will be very difficult to swallow for both the sort of progressive trans orthodoxy people and the gender critical people alike. So we'll see.
Sounds like a blast, man. I hope you live stream it.
That's a great idea. Holy moly, I hadn't thought of that. That's a great idea. And yeah.
And we could talk offline. Anything I can do to facilitate.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, I'll take you up on your offer to do something right around to hang out right either before or after Christmas. I'm very much in the Christmas spirit this year. So I look forward to that as well. But yeah, thank you for the suggestion. Wow, my head's like, I hadn't thought to do that. That would be live streaming. It would be not playing it safe. That's for sure. That takes the fucking training wheels off. That takes my ability to be like, let me go back and, edit something out or something, whoo, even thinking about it, it's a thrill. It's like, all right, pushing you out of the plane, just fucking jump, Let's see if Keith agrees to that.
Do it live.
Let's see if Keith agrees.
Yeah. And mine is jamesbroadtv.substack.com. I am writing 2-minute radio style columns. I've also started the media of it all. My notes column, that's on mediastudies.substack.com. That's weekly on Mondays afternoons. I'm pumped about it. Roger Ailes' piece is coming. And I have some other projects. I always got a bunch of projects coming. And as I build a plane in order to hopefully fly it.
Love it. Happy holidays to whoever's checking this out.
Yeah.
And to you, of course.
Yeah. Well, later, everybody. Let's try to do this next week.
Yeah, I'm into it.
All right. Peace.
Peace.